Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Sunday. It's Sunday Fun Day, and it's Malt Muser and Bourbon Bounty. We're going to sip some bourbon tonight, have a couple drinks with y'all. Stick around for a little while, see what's going on. I see some folks in the chat already. What's up? I'm happy to bring on a guest tonight who's been doing a bunch of bourbon reviews for a while now on YouTube. And we've been chatting about bourbon. We're going to do a little bourbon tasting tonight. Specifically going to check out that new Elijah Craig barrel proof batch, which everybody's been raving about. I just did a review of it myself. Also, 2 thumbs up from me. So great bourbon. Should be a lot of fun, but I'm going to hand things over to Bourbon Bounty. Say what's up.
All right. Well, I hope that I can turn these thumbs up on it. I have not tried it yet. I have to drive a little ways to get good bourbon around here because of state-ran ABC stores. Hope everybody's doing all right, by the way. Hope we can have some fun here tonight. But the ABC store I have to go to is a smaller ABC board, state-ran board. And
Sure.
and the lady that's president of that board loves bourbon. So that's why I drive the extra distance, to get good stuff. But yeah, I had to drive all the way to Mocksville, North Carolina, and I'm in Winston-Salem. So it's about 35 minutes. But yeah, I went and bought and I just bought whatever was on the shelf, which just happened to be the batch 520. So
Nice, man.
I can get it.
Beautiful.
Yes. And it's 127.2 proof, 63.6% by volume. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. I'm excited to get into it too. We got a few folks in saying hi here on a Sunday. We'll just do the rounds, say what's up to everybody. Mr. French first in the door. What's up, buddy? Nice to see you on a Sunday. He drinks on Sunday too, he says. Snag Jr., we got Donner Pass in the house. What's up, buddy? Nice to see you, Donner. Thanks for joining us. Mark Stengel from Las Vegas, beaming the signal across the country. We got Bourbon Bounty here in North Carolina. I am in Philadelphia, PA. Good to see you, my friend. Donner Pass has got some drinking scotch tonight, but likes himself some bourbon. Right on. Well, we're going to be chatting about some bourbon. That is for sure. Mark's talking about a state liquor store. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec, Mark, actually. Andrew Page, what's up, buddy? Nice to see you, man. Greetings from Maine. All right. We're just covering the country here already tonight. Good deal. Yeah, Mark. So Mark brought up the state liquor store thing. And Bounty, you might want to pick up what I leave down here. But, when I lived in Washington, D.C., Virginia was one of those places where it was all the state-run. They were called ABC stores. And same thing in North Carolina?
Yes. Same thing here and in Virginia. So I can't even drive north. Which Virginia is real close.
Right.
Charlotte's about an hour and a half away, but Charlotte's right there at that the 3 corners, where Georgia and South Carolina, all meet.
Yeah.
And so you can go there that route, but that's about an hour and a half away from me, and then I can go down into Georgia. But if you hit the liquor stores just over the border, you won't find squat. Because everyone in Charlotte goes there to buy all their good stuff. And they know those guys that run those liquor stores, and they save stuff for them and all of that.
Yeah, totally. I had a similar experience in D.C., obviously being such a traveled city where a lot of folks come in, the local shops were real expensive in D.C. And so you could go across the border, especially if you were a bourbon fan, and get bourbon releases. And the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, I used to be able to get those for $60 a pop at the Virginia ABC stores. And, it was just right across the Potomac, right? You just head over there, hop to a few of them. They'll have you get there at the right time when they're still on the shelf, and you could land them. But otherwise, it was a bit of an issue. But I suppose before we get into it, man, what do you got in your glass right now? I have some of this. I'm starting things off with, this is Old Ezra. 7-year-old. It's a barrel strength release, 58.5. So it's got some heat, pretty young, but I tell you, this thing drinks a little older than its age. I'm enjoying it so far.
Well, what I poured here was, and I like to let them get a little air. So I poured the regular Elijah Craig, and it's the lighter color over here. I noticed right off the bat there's a darker amber on the barrel proof. Now, of course, that's typical because they're going to add water to the non-barrel proof, and it's going to lighten the color. You can't add any color and still call it a bourbon. So I want to try because I really love Elijah Craig as a what I call a good low end starter bourbon. For someone who's just getting into bourbon tasting because it gives you more notes and pure notes, more pure notes than say like a Jim Beam, the flat, uh, 40, the 80 proof. And I know I've said this, and I catch some flack sometimes for saying it, but I mean, hell, all I'm doing is telling the truth. So don't shoot the messenger here. But the problem I have with the low end bourbons, which for Buffalo Trace is called Benchmark, right? And people rave over Benchmark because they don't know squadoosh about bourbon, and they see the Buffalo Trace printed in small print down at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
But it is one of those 80 proof, 40%. And so is regular Jim Beam. So is regular Jack Daniels, which is not a bourbon, it's a Tennessee whiskey. But still, what they do is they mass produce just tons of gallons of this stuff. And they don't have good warehouse control for those barrels, the ones that they're
Yeah,
going to
interesting.
mix all together. So if you have a barrel that's not quite as good, or it has some impurities in it, it doesn't matter because they're going to combine all these barrels together and they're going to add water until they get that 80 proof.
Right.
That does create a consistency of flavor. Okay. So I call it like the Coca-Cola or Pepsi of bourbon, right? So you're going to get the same thing every single time.
Yeah.
But that's not always a good thing if you're trying to discover new notes and things with bourbon. Now, if you just say, hey, I just like to have bourbon, hey, I don't judge anybody.
Right.
Knock yourself out. But, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to find bourbons that are unique, juxtaposed against other notes, and you're just not going to get that with those flat, low end bourbon.
I hear you on that. Hey, Bounty, were you near an earthquake today? One of our folks in the chat, Donner Pass, was asking about that. I thought he was asking me. I was like, I don't think we get. I've only been in Philly a little bit over a year, but I'm not sure we get earthquakes here.
Well, my next door neighbor moved here from California. His name, of course, he's not but his name's Joe Walsh, and I hope he's on here. If he is, say hi. But I always say my neighbor from California is Joe Walsh, and I don't know if he can play my Maserati does 185 or not. Life's been good, but he was his first reaction was anger because he said I moved over 3,000 miles across the United States and I land back on a fault line, But that's the first one we've had here since I've been here for 3 years. And it was a 5.1, I think. And
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they felt it about 40 miles from here, about anywhere. I think it's between 35 and 40 miles away, depending on where they live within Greensboro. And because one of my employees, he's my senior analyst or senior project manager, he sent out a message, said he felt it pretty good. Now I set up a little late last night on a live, and so I was still asleep at 8 when it hit. So
you must have been a good live if you slept through an earthquake, bud.
Yeah, I didn't even feel it. So my wife felt it. So when I woke up, she's like, "Did you feel the earthquake?" And I said, "Shit, I was rocking in my dreams."
Awesome, man. So picking up on what you said about Elijah Craig, I agree with you. From what I recall, the Elijah Craig small batch, which you can get down. I mean, here in Philly area, that's like in that 25 to 30 range. But I definitely would agree with you. It's a step up above your like mass-produced kind of, as you were describing, sort of the introductory whiskeys that we all have at some point in time in our life. Jim Beam White Label. Even the Jack Daniels Black Label, so on and so forth. A Benchmark, which I've actually never had, but it doesn't look like that's doesn't sound like I'm missing much with that.
Yeah.
But if I recall correctly, so the small batch, which is the intro line, the introductory range bottle from Elijah Craig actually replaced the old 12, because it was a 12-year age statement for quite some time, and now it's like a 7 to like 11 years, something like that.
I always just say they don't put the statement on there, but what I think their minimum is 8, is what I heard.
Oh, okay, so it's like right around that age.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you, man. I always thought that even when I luckily I have a good story to tell you about the Elijah Craig 12, which I can tell you a little bit later. But I actually was, I don't think the small batch one now is, obviously quite as good, but still really solid. You get some nice spice in it. You can mix it in a cocktail. It's got good ABV, and it's decent to sip. It's got some complexity to it. It's just one of those whiskeys that I think, for the folks who are like, I'm ready to buy a bottle of Buffalo Trace, the which one I'm talking about, the Buffalo Trace bottle. It's like, it's a good alternative right in that ABV range, same kind of quality, I would say, and like nothing to sneeze at.
No, it's good. I call it the frontier bourbon, or the campfire bourbon is what I call it. They call it the frontier bourbon.
Yeah.
There's some earthy notes to it beyond, it's a little what I call deeper in the earthy notes than Elijah Craig. Elijah Craig I call the honeysuckle bourbon. It reminds me of honeysuckle, and it's sweet. It's higher on the sweet scale. Elijah Craig is, and you get more caramel vanilla. I don't know if there's any rye at all in Elijah Craig. I don't think there's any.
I think there's, if I'm not mistaken, there's some, but I don't think it's very high. I think it was like
single digit %.
Yeah, I think it was single digit.
Yeah,
well, Carl's in the house, beaming in from the UK. What's up, Welsh? Yeah, ditto. I do miss that 12-year. Those are coveted items these days. Luckily I do have myself a bottle of it that I'm going to open up one of these days. It's been a long time since I've had it, but God, man, you try to find those on secondary market now. They're like $150 or something. Sometimes every once in a while you'll find one sitting on a shop shelf somewhere, in which case you just buy everyone you can. But
that's the dusty bottle. Now, Donner Pass Whiskey said, glad all those bottles are still on the shelf. I have a story about that. A few years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I had a bar over, before I built the studio out. I had all my stuff on shelves over there, and they were glass. And I had to travel for business, and I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, about to get on an airplane, and my wife sends me a text with a picture of bourbon all over the floor.
Oh no.
The glass broke. So, and once the top glass shelf broke, it went down, the next one broke, and I lost a couple of, it was well over $1,000 worth of bourbon. I don't know,
oh, man,
what it was.
That's GD right there.
But I had to start over. And that's why, and I was getting ready to start this channel, and that's why I only started this year with this channel, because I had to rebuild my collection.
Damn, man, how many bottles do you think you lost?
I don't know. I don't even want to think about it. But they're all
onward and upwards, right? Judging from your setup now, it looks like you got a pretty decent collection growing behind you, man. So that's good.
Well, and what you don't see is those shelves. Now over there, I have like Whistle Pig, Uncle Nearest, Tennessee whiskey.
Sure.
I have other, and bourbons I don't really care for that much. I've bought them. One of them was Doc Porter's, which is made in Charlotte, and because I wanted to try local. And it is crap. And I'm sorry if somebody likes Doc Porter, but I can guarantee you they're not aging. They're trying to pressure age the bourbon to beat nature, because it is so bitter. The tannins come out of that wood, and they're trying to either heat age it or pressure age it or something. So it is not good. And so it's over there. But I also have backup bottles. Like a lot of these bottles that are here, I have a full bottle over there.
Sure. Keeping a backup's a good idea these days after an experience like that, man.
Oh, yeah. Right. And what I was going to say though is, since that disaster, those shelves over there are solid oak, and I made sure I bought oak, and they are anchored into the wall. This shelf here I hit every stud with huge lag bolts. So I'm pretty confident about my shelving now.
Yeah, man. You don't want to make that mistake again, especially now that you're getting earthquakes in North Carolina. Could have been just the perfect storm, right?
No, that would have been bad.
Yeah.
Well, and it was before I put the hardwood down in here. I'm hoping that if I have a bottle or two fall, it won't break. Because I have, before I put the hardwood down, this was stained concrete floor. And if a bottle touches it from 2 inches away, it's going to bust.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to nose these.
Yeah, do it. I actually just poured a little bit of the Elijah Craig. This is the A batch from this year. This is going to be the first time I compare these two. I'm going to do a comparison of these two. But yeah, feel free to go at it. I got to grab one more glass.
Ooh, I can tell the difference already. And I have my trusty water with me.
I've never compared the regular small batch to the barrel proof, but I can only imagine. I mean, you must be getting just the like, first of all, the fire off the barrel proof.
No, not really.
That's good.
It is not nosing hot at all.
This one, you'd be surprised. I know that 63.6, it actually brought it down a bit. The B batch I noticed tends to be the one with the least ABV out of the three they do each year. Yeah, now not compared to that. Yeah.
Well, I have to pour a little of this because it's one of my favorite barrel proofs.
Which batch is that one?
2019-03.
Okay.
Yeah, and I am drinking it.
Is that Sip a While? No, and that's not Sip a While. It's
this is Country Ham.
Country Ham. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep that over there. I can tell you already the Booker's is darker in color just from that pour. Now I wanna compare them because actually the Elijah Craig is about 1% higher in alcohol than the Elijah Craig.
Than the Booker's?
Yeah, or than the Booker's, yeah.
Yeah, Booker's is an interesting one. I had a good batch of it. I thought it was good. 2008-01. It was called like Kathleen's batch, which I liked quite a bit, but I haven't had any much. I'd be curious if anybody in the chat, if any of y'all have had any of the newer Booker's releases or folks got thoughts on the Booker stuff. My general feeling on them was I quite enjoyed the pour, but they were real hot and kind of just youthful. I don't know what the age on those. I think they're all like 6 years, 7 year, maybe. I'm not sure how those Bookers are, but I think they're usually somewhere in
6 years, 4 months, 2 days.
Yeah,
now
okay.
They vary though. They vary because this is supposed to be a Booker No master perfection item, right? And that's why they're barreled straight from the bottle because they're distilled and aged a specific amount, and some of them may need to age a little longer. It just depends on what he feels the wood that he wants to get out of there.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to go ahead and taste this. I'm going to start off with a regular Elijah Craig.
Do it.
That I know well. So get the tongue ready.
Yeah, man, it's a good palate setter. Well, he does that. I got a good story to tell you guys about Elijah Craig. So when I was first getting into bourbon, actually, why don't you do your notes first?
Oh,
I'll get into it.
Well, I already know, and I don't. I always say in my videos, I don't like to give a lot of notes off that first sip. It kind of because you might get punched in the face with something, and you need to let it settle in.
Yeah.
But I know a lot regular Elijah Craig. So caramel, vanilla, apple, maybe some apricot, but mostly apple pear.
Yeah.
But you're getting good pure notes, and it does not taste watered down, and that's what I like about it. When you add too much water to a bourbon, it gives it this little musty flavor or something and it's the same across every bourbon, and I can't really explain it, but it's like I smelled a wet sock or something, not a dirty wet sock, but just a like the clothes come out of the dryer too fast or something, and they're still damp. But that's kind of that little kick I get anytime too much water's added. But basically, and I call this the honeysuckle bourbon, the regular 94 proof, because that's what it reminds me of. It's a sweeter bourbon. Uh, uh,
Most
Against
definitely.
that, Larceny is one that's a little bit drier than Elijah Craig.
Yeah, and larceny is also the heavy wheat, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so before we get into these barrel proofs, I'll tell you a quick story about my first experience with Elijah Craig whiskey. Back in I don't know, this must have been 7-8 years ago. I was first getting into whiskey and, had the Jim Beam, had the, the stuff you shoot at a bar, right? And it even had the bullet. And, I started hearing about Buffalo Trace. And so, of course, I go down to this local liquor store. This is when I was in Milwaukee. It's a place called Warehouse. And I go in and I'm like looking around for this Buffalo Trace, right? And there's a guy working there. I'm like, hey, I'm looking for this whiskey called Buffalo Trace. Do you guys have it? He's like, no, we actually are all sold out. We're usually run out of that one quick. And so I was all bummed out. And he was like, well, let me tell you about this one bourbon here. So he pulls out a bottle of the Elijah Craig 12. And, starts talking to me about it. And I'm like, I'm into it. I'm like, oh, this sounds good. But, of course, being a real noob, I went in looking for Buffalo Trace. They don't got Buffalo Trace. So I was like, all right, I'll think about it, right? He puts it back on the shelf. I'm over in the tequila aisle picking out a nice tequila to take home. The guy comes around the corner and he goes, hey, man, he's like, let me get this bottle for you. I'll put it up at the register. He bought me the bottle of Elijah Craig 12. And so it ended up being my first age statement bourbon. Took it home, sipped on it, and it was like one of those whiskeys that started my journey into appreciating bourbon. And it was all just because of this random act of generosity from a liquor store employee who just all about it. I mean, it was one of those great experiences. And so I have a fondness in my heart for all things Elijah Craig, including, I know they have a new one called their Toasted Oak, which is coming out, which I'm going to have to keep my eyes out on for relatively soon. But with that, do you want to hop into these barrel proof?
Yep. And I'm trying to check the legs on this thing, and I swear the legs on the regular Elijah Craig look better. Just from the first glance swirls here.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. They're thin. They're slow moving, relatively thin.
Yep. All right, let's do it.
Cheers.
Yeah. Wow, that's a whole different league.
Yeah, it's so good.
That's a whole different ball game right there.
What really blew my mind about this one?
Oh, go ahead.
What really blew my mind initially about this one, that you can almost you can drink it neat and it doesn't blow your head back like the other ones do. I mean, granted, it's only 3 or 4 ABV, but this is still 64%. But this one, it's just more rounded. It's less edgy than the others, even though it's got all that spice, which is what I think is making this B50520 really special.
Oh yeah, man, that was something incredible right there. I'm gonna take another sip of it before I hit that Booker's. Now I know I love Booker's, that at least the 1903. I covet that bottle about as much as I do my Eagle Rare. And I want to get an Eagle Rare 17.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah, but my channel, if people don't know, I try to keep the price of bourbon down below $100 that I review on a regular basis. I would have to put it up as like a bonus video or something, because I'm not trying to get people to, get a second mortgage or sell their car to buy bourbon. But if I get a chance to get a bottle of stuff, I will spend well over $100 on a bottle if I think it's going to be worth it, because I'm not going to review it. It's just for me to enjoy. But this Elijah Craig here was under $60.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about the barrel proof. I mean, I've been reviewing every batch pretty much every time I get him. And as I kind of rant about continuously on my reviews, the ACBP
Mm.
The price is going to range. You can find it sometimes for 60, sometimes it'll be 80. I think this is worth it at 80. I think it's worth it even a little bit higher than 80. I mean, I just think this is one of the best bourbons you can get your hands on, hands down. I mean, before you go into like high-end territory.
Right. Now the Booker's here is 80, or it's getting around 90.
Yeah, well, Bookers are quite expensive.
Yeah.
So interesting question about the ECBB from Andrew Page. Does anybody know why ECB hides the age on the side of the bottle? You think the 12-year age statement is significant enough to advertise on the front? Yeah, it's a good question, man. So for folks who've never seen this before, like the Elijah Craig, they put the barrel proof or the age right on this little just side panel. So nothing on the front indicating it's 12 years. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe they think just providing this, they give you the proof, ABV, the batch number. I don't know. Maybe they think that's doing enough work for them. But yeah, I do wonder why they kind of don't make that more prominent. I'm not sure if you have any knowledge on that.
No, I don't. Well, I do know that they relaxed the rules on aging to call it a bourbon, right? At one point, it had to be aged at least 2 years.
Right.
And if it was under 4 years, you had to put the age statement on the bottle. But you could put it anywhere on the bottle.
Yeah.
You could hide it on the side. You could print it, and that may be a holdover from those days when you had to, if they were producing a young bourbon and they didn't really want that to be prominent, and they just put all their age statements in the same spot, just so people won't pay attention to it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's interesting. I was not aware that they had relaxed that at all, but I do know that, unlike with Scotch, you can't add color to bourbon legally.
Right.
But you can chill filter it, but they do actually, on this one, they explicitly say non-chill filtered, and they say it twice. Non-chill filtered on the side, without chill filtration on the front. Like they're serious about that. Even on the previous release where the label is a little older, you can see they've changed the bottle a little bit. The labels, at least.
Yep. The
label's a little bigger on the newer one, but they still uncut straight from the barrel. So they've added it to say non-chill filtered on the front. Is basically what they did with the new label. But yeah, they still have the age on the side. I'm not sure.
I will tell you this: I tried the Bookers after a water swish between the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof and the Bookers. Bookers to me is better.
Really?
A little
wow.
Bit, but they're
I didn't expect that.
They're different, and I think the Bookers gives me the darker, like I like some of that earthiness to a bourbon, and I'm getting more of that, spice or that earth, the barley or whatever, a little nuttiness to it on that toasted barley or whatever, and it's given me more of those deeper fruit notes. Now, with that said, the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof just schooled Elijah Craig small batch.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's interesting. My experience, I'd be curious with the Bookers. How's the finish on that, and how would you compare it to the Elijah Craig barrel proof that you just had?
Yeah, and that's why I was being very careful about the way I worded that, because I like a little harshness sometimes, and I like to say on my videos, it reminds me I'm drinking whiskey. And I think Elijah Craig, to me, gives me just enough of that burn in the back to remind me I'm really drinking whiskey, and I get a good hug off of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's what I would call dangerous. The Booker's to me is dangerous because it doesn't feel like you're drinking a barrel proof, and it goes down so smooth, and there's no burn, and all of a sudden you're going to drink enough to where it's about to, mule kick you on the couch, and you're not going to get up till tomorrow.
Sometimes that's not the worst thing.
Yeah, sometimes we need that little break.
Well, you heard it here first, man. Bourbon Bounty says ECBP is good, but Booker's is better. I'd be curious if you have any other batch or have had any other batches of Bookers, because I know they do four a year, right?
Yeah, I have not. This was the one splurge on my replacement shelf,
Sure.
but I did go and see they do have the new Bookers on the shelf where I buy my bourbons, and so but I was telling you I went just for the barrel proof Elijah Craig so we could do this, and I ended up walking out of there with this and the Coopers, which is a higher rye bourbon. Really, really good too for the price. But my son's birthday was this weekend, so I bought him a birthday gift, and I didn't want to keep spending the hundreds on the bourbon, so I didn't.
Add up quick.
Yeah, I didn't get that bottle of Booker's. I hope they have it when I go back.
So interesting enough, I'm sipping a bit of this is the first batch of the ECBP from this year, which has a lot more of like clove, dark spice in it, allspice, clove, baking spice. Whereas this one, the B batch, it's sweeter,
Yep.
a little bit more like I don't know, there's a little dark fruit in here, but I get a lot of honey, toffee.
Yep.
It's just it's you can just tell it's like more rounded. You know what I mean?
What's that toffee candy?
Yeah.
Werther's Original or whatever. It's a difference between like a regular little like super sweet caramel candy and like a darker Werther's. But that Booker's takes you into molasses and a lot of leather, and tobacco notes. The Elijah Craig, at least the B520, didn't take me there. I did get some pretty good wood notes out of it, but it's like a darker it's almost like an exact darker version of regular Elijah Craig. It just takes you down into that little darker layer.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not dogging on it when I say Booker's is better. Booker's is hard to beat. That's like saying.
That's interesting. I like the Kathleen's batch that I've had. I quite enjoyed. I mean, it was like a 3.75, 4 out of 5 whiskey for me. The thing about Booker's I found was that again, I've only had like a couple batches that I've had samples of in one bottle, so it's difficult to tell. I just found that with these ECBPs, there's a bit more complexity and a bit more like harmony among the flavors. The Booker's was like louder, but it was more like 2 notes were real loud. The rest was kind of murky. Whereas, and again, this was just the one that I had. But the ECBP I find just from start to finish is more of a ride. There's a bit more of a roller coaster of like you kind of go through initially. On this one, for example, obviously vanilla, brown sugar, salted caramel kind of thing. Then you get a little slight kind of herbal mint punch. And then it's like, it kind of just weaves you through this a little bit. Whereas I just remember the Booker's being like, holy cow, intense. And then it kind of was just that.
I don't know. Maybe I got lucky because the only one I've ever tried is 2019-03 Country Ham. And I've heard people talk about Booker's and say that, I think Booker's is pricing themselves out, but they've never really talked about this batch, this version of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe I got lucky and got one of the better ones they've ever done.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, like I said, the one that I had, I thought was really good. But yeah, I've heard it. I've also heard the similar thing you're saying, where like, a couple of years ago, Booker's was like $59.99, right? Now you go in there, it's $90 in some places.
Yep.
You got to make the judgment call, but it's nothing to sneeze at. It sounds like this one's really good.
Oh, and that's why I'm hanging on to it. I don't pour a lot. I keep it on that top shelf up there, and I don't touch it, and because I know I'm probably not going to get it again,
And I can tell you on this Elijah Craig, I don't know if you're getting it, but man, that dark chocolate baking cocoa note is just amazing. And it lasts, it's just hanging on for a real long time.
Yeah, funny that you mentioned that because it is there, and that's another thing I tell people about some of these bourbons is, especially a higher rye bourbon, don't take one sip and then walk away going, that's crap. You have to get a few sips in. And that last video I did, I said it's kind of like putting a sour candy in your mouth. You know, the first thing is you get that punch back here, and it's like overwhelming, flavor. And then as it settles in, and you start, getting used to the flavor, and then you can actually taste it. But take at least 3 or 4 sips of it, because the more I sip on it, the more notes I'm picking up out of here.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you completely on that, man. Completely on that. Mm. It's just a real treat. It just delivers every time, man. It really does. I think this A batch, again, you're hard pressed to find a bad batch of this. I just think this is a little bit more in what I kind of find is the regular style. Like there's not a ton of variation in the ECBPs, I find. I mean, the ABV, you get a little more of something in some and others. This one has a lot more kind of your, like I was saying, more spice.
Right.
But it also finishes off a bit on the drier side. Whereas this, and obviously a bit on the hot side. Whereas, man, the B52 is just like, I'm so surprised at how round it is. Like how the edges are kind of shaved off. That I just don't find that in a barrel proof whiskey very often.
No, I think it's a really well balanced bourbon.
Yeah, and you just don't find that very often. It's even in these releases, which I all think are really, really good. Yeah, they're great, man. I do what I can to try to hunt down each batch each year, just because I really think they're awesome. The other things, speaking of the kind of the barrel proof stuff, which I'm getting increased attention, is the Stag Junior. I know somebody mentioned, I think it was French earlier, said that he was drinking the Stag Junior. My experience with Stag Junior, I want to say 2 years ago when we were in like batch 7, batch 6, wasn't that impressed. It was really loud. It was really kind of jumbled. You really couldn't pick out a lot of distinct notes. It was just kind of a hot mess. But I've heard a lot of these newer batches are really good, and that maybe they've really kind of found their footing. But unfortunately, I mean, you're good luck finding Stag Junior anywhere around here. Is that something you had before, or you see around your area?
I've had it before, but it's been a while, and I wasn't impressed. But I'd love to get my hands on a bottle of it now.
Yeah. When did you have Stag Junior the last time? Do you remember?
It was in Dallas, Texas, at there's a bar there called, I'm trying to think of the name of it now. It's a whiskey bar, okay? And I can't, the Republic, that's what it's called. I had Revolution in my head and I couldn't get it out. It's called the Republic. And it's not a bourbon bar, it's a whiskey bar. So they have all kinds of scotches, bourbons, Tennessee whiskeys, Canadian whiskeys, Irish whiskeys, all of that. And the book that they give you is like this thick. And it's really fine print, 2 columns on each page. And there were like 5 pages of bourbons, and they listed other whiskeys on the bourbon page as well. Like one they put on there that should have been in between, or should have been right around the Scotch, was Hibiki.
Oh, sure. Japanese, probably.
Yeah, but they had it listed with the bourbons, and I'm like, man. And I checked and I looked, under different whiskey styles, and I did not see it listed. So I'm like, man, y'all are killing. And I told the guy, I said, you need to move this out of the bourbon pages over into, have a Japanese whiskey section, because they studied how to make Scotch and then went back to Japan and local sourced and put their spin on it. And I said, this has nothing to do with bourbon at all, So I said, what you're going to have is people not able to find it. They're never going to think to look under bourbon. So they took it under advisement. But anyway, but I had Stag Junior there. And that was 3 years ago.
Okay, so it's probably one of those younger batches too then.
Yeah, probably.
Sure.
And it wasn't that expensive on the menu. I mean, they pretty much charged about anywhere from $8 to $25 to even over $100 a shot, And it was one of the probably $10, $12 pours. You know, I had a vendor paying, so don't think I'm you know, Jack Rich over here.
Right on. Let's catch up in the chat. We got some good folks
Oh yeah.
talking about Booker's, ECBP, all sorts of stuff. Mark saying a lot of great bourbon for 80 or less. No doubt about that. Welsh Toro really likes Booker's. Seems like old school American bourbon. I hear you on that. Juan says Booker's is good. Some batches can be mediocre. I think get more consistency from the ECBP. Sure. I hear you. Country Ham says one of the best batches. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
It sounds like Juan's had it, and also having the same experience. That sounds really good. Donner Pass has got a 2017-02 that I stashed away 2 years ago. Nice. So some folks get a lot of these. For me, it doesn't get better than Barrel Proof Elijah, Bar 2 Chateau Le Blanc. And the Fusion and Discovery as well are pretty damn good. Okay, right on, Anthony. I haven't had either of those, but that sounds pretty damn good. Which keeps going back to ACCVP. Hey, Alan, the whiskey friend is in the house. What's up, Alan? Happy Sunday. Cheers to you over in the UK. Andrew Page, what is your favorite ECVP so far? Oh, boy. Have you had a lot of these batches, Bounty?
What's that?
Have you had a lot of the different ECVP batches?
No.
Right on. I was going to say I'd kick this question to you too, but
well, and the only reason is I couldn't get them at the local ABC store next to me.
Sure.
But now I know where I can go and get it, you know. But I have to drive 35 minutes one way. So
yeah,
it's worth it.
Yeah, I kind of agree, especially if you can get I usually just go over the river. I mean, I'm in Philadelphia, which is also government stores. They're called Fine Wine, Good Spirits. And but you know, I'm right across the river from Jersey, and you know, it's all private shops there. So if I can't find things here, I usually make my way over there. But you know, Andrew, this B50-520 is a real contender. The A120 from last year, or A119 from last year, also one of my favorites. And then my third, which may be my favorite of them all, it was the C batch from 2000, C917. So it's C from September of 2017. I'd love to do all three of those next to each other. I might be able to pull it off at some point. I got to go see if I have another bottle of that C917 batch. But man, I love those. But I'll be honest, I think the weakest one I've had is probably the B519, and it's still better than 95% of the bourbon I think most people can get their hands on, including myself. So, I mean, you know, it's always good. And let's see what else we got. Yeah, we're both about caught up, so cool deal. Yeah, so I'm glad you enjoyed this one, man. I think this is going to grow on you quite a bit. And,
yeah.
You know, you're going to enjoy every sip of this bottle, especially at that great price you got it for.
Right. Yeah. It was 57, I think. That's what I paid plus tax. So it was probably 62, 63.
Damn. I wish.
But the ABC store has to charge. They can't jack the price.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So that's why. Okay. That makes sense.
So if we get Pappy.
In Virginia, they were like 56 or something.
Yeah. If we get Pappy Van Winkle here at the ABC board, they don't distribute it. The state holds it, and they do a raffle, and they'll say we have, 30 bottles, and they can't charge for the raffle. But you have to have a valid driver's license in the state. You have to pick it up in person, and you have to register a local ABC store that they're going to send it to, right? If you win, but they charge $189 for it.
Yeah, yeah. They do the raffles. It was the same thing in VA, man. Yeah. I tried to get in a few. So there's this county in Maryland that's got Maryland is interesting. So I would go hunting there for whiskeys when I lived in Washington D.C. and there's one county which is county run. It was Montgomery County, so you could get into the raffles for that stuff there. But otherwise, it was kind of just free for all, as you would expect.
Yeah. Now, one thing they do here that they can do with the ABC store is they will not put stuff on the shelf. So, because they don't want someone accidentally buying like a noob going up, going, "Oh, look, that pretty bottle," and they have no idea what the hell they just bought. So they're even Buffalo Trace they won't put on the shelf, even though it's like a $35 bourbon, because too many people covet it. Eagle Rare's behind the counter, Buffalo Trace is behind the counter. If they get Blanton's, it stays behind the counter. There's all these different ones, and you have to ask for the bourbon by name. And now, and when I go in, I say, "So do we have to do this? Do I have to go in alphabetical order?"
Yeah.
And I just start naming bourbons, and so now they kind of know me, but I'll walk in and say, "Hey, do you have anything behind?" Or I say, "Do you have anything for me back there?" And if they, no, I don't have anything. Then I go on, and if they go, I might have something back here. Then we have to play the game.
Yeah. I'll tell you, for some of our friends in the chat who are from the across the pond, man, the liquor laws in the United States I can't imagine are rivaled as they like by anywhere. It's so bizarre. Every state, and even down to like the county level, can kind of make their own rules. It's a weird thing. There's rules about shipping. I live in PA. You can't get liquor shipped, but you can get wine shipped. You can't buy beer at the liquor store. You have to buy beer at a separate store. So in Philly, there are beer stores, and then which are private, and then there are wine and liquor stores, which are all called Fine Wine, Good Spirits, everywhere in the state. Now, to their credit, yeah, you're not going to get the same variety as a private shop, but I will say they do a pretty good job here of like getting good bottles. You can get in raffles for all sorts of like rare stuff. They're real equitable about it. And their prices aren't bad on certain things. I mean, here in PA, you can still get a bottle of Ardbeg 10 for like $48, which is, I think, probably close to the cheapest. It's, for Scotch, for a peated Scotch is one of the cheapest I see them. But you can get Sazerac Rye in the government shops here for $26.99, $27.99, which is like that. Everywhere else is like $40 these days.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too. If I were going to splurge on a Scotch, I do. As far as a base note flavor, I know what Scotch tastes like. I've had the cheaper stuff, and I have a bottle of Monkey Shoulder up there.
Starter.
It's decent. It gives you that butterscotchy, that buttery note. To it. But I really don't like. I don't mind a little smoke, in it, but I don't want it overpeated.
Yeah.
But what would be one if I wanted to stay away from the peat? Smoky, that is just would blow my socks off.
Oh man, you have opened the Pandora's box.
Yeah, I know.
There are some folks in the chat who got some great ideas on this one. If you're staying away from peat, so I guess what is the price range that you're looking to spend? Is probably
it depends. I mean, I 200.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking. For 200, Glendronach 18-year-old Allardyce, which is all Oloroso sherry. It is, I think, 46%. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, $200. I'm man. Highland Park 18.
Okay, I've seen that on the shelf now.
Yeah, Highland Park 18 is seriously good. A lot of folks love it. Really palatable. A lot of complexity. Boy, man.
Yeah. No, and the reason every time I go in, there's all the Macallans, right?
Yeah.
And they're all stacked out here in a pyramid, and then you can see these ones peeking out from behind them, But I know better than to fall into the mainstream marketing crap.
Yeah. I mean, I would honestly say, like, if you're going to try to go down the Scotch road and try different Scotches, I mean, I don't even think you'd need to start at $200 to get good stuff. I mean, you could spend $200 and get a variety of things. The thing about Scotch which I think one of the ways it really differentiates itself from bourbon is really the sheer variety of styles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you're seeing some bourbons nowadays with like they have like some sherry finish or wine finish, but like this is, first of all, I think those notes are much more prominent and interesting in Scotch just because of the barley nature. It's not as sweet as the corn.
Right.
But like, I mean, there are some things you could totally try. I mean, one that I recommend to everybody when they're getting into Scotch is Highland Park 12. It's got a nice body. It's got some bourbon notes. It's got some sherry. It's got a really sweet, slightly sweet smoke to it. So it's almost hardly noticeable, but it's there.
Right.
Great stuff. I mean, there's just no shortage of like, even in the 12-year-old whiskey, whiskeys that, like, I think you can get a lot of really, really good stuff and try a variety of styles. Glendronach 12. Welsh Toro mentioning Ben Romick 10. That's a really good one. Yeah. Old Pulteney 10 or 12. There's just, it's the styles mostly. It's like if you're a bourbon drinker and you're kind of looking for like a transition from like, something that's bourbon like, but you're getting in Scotch. I think of things that are like heavy on.
And this is for me personally, right? Yeah. This is for, hey, it's Christmas time. It's Thanksgiving. We're going to have a good meal and have a nightcap, let's pour some of the Scotch, and that's when I was, and I may get like a Highland Park 12 and then try it and then go back and get the 18 for the special occasion or something.
Good idea. The 12 is just like classic. It's one of my favorite go back to whiskeys, not because it's like the most complex or it's not the most anything, which is what I think is so good about it. It's literally one of these that like, it's just got a little bit of everything going for it. It's very much just like, if you don't know what you want to drink and you come home and you're looking at your collection, you're like, oh God, I don't know. What am I in the mood for? Like you can just like pour Highland Park 12 and it's always going to be, right there for you. It'll give you a little bit of everything you want. It's a great way to start and kind of see what you're feeling that day, kind of take off, like a launch pad. Right. Mm-hmm. It's good stuff. And yeah, the 18 I think is a really solid one. If you're staying away from peat, I mean, for the most part, you're going to want to stick away from the Islay whiskeys where you're like Ardbeg, Lagavulin, Kilchoman, Lafroig, that kind of stuff. I would also consider looking at, and maybe some folks in the chat will have recommendations on maybe an Auchentoshan, but like when you're thinking about one of those Scotches for a bourbon drinker, Auchentoshan and the lowland stuff tends to be, kind of got a lot of those characteristic bourbon flavors to it that, just on a different base, obviously multiple.
Right. I know that, I've had Scotch here and there, and usually it's when I would visit someone and they know I'm a whiskey drinker.
Yeah.
And they have all these different Scotches. So when I walk in, they're like, oh, I have something I want you to try, and we'll, but a lot of times though, they would pour it over ice. And, I'm trying to be, I'm not going to be like, can you pour me a neat one? Because
it's all that water in my drink.
But yeah, I mean, so I've had a few and I like it. But a lot of people say that the Scottish distilleries or the Booker Nose of the Scotch world, sometimes they distill Scotch to have water added to it. Is there truth behind that?
Yeah, I mean, insofar as they're like distilling stuff down to sell for 44% or 40% ABV kind of stuff. I mean, probably in a similar way that, there's still a lot of the, like, just like you were mentioning earlier about, the Jim Beams, the kind of mass produced stuff that's, they're just dumping water into. Same thing happens with Scotch. I mean, your Glenlivet 12, Glenlivets, Glenfiddich, basically the lower age stuff, those big names. And then you have the blends, of course. Johnny Walker, Red, if you sadly ever have to drink that. Dewar's, some of these like those are like your Jim Beams of the Scotch world. I think that's fair, right, y'all? This Dewar's white label, kind of like the Jim Beam of Scotch. maybe Johnny Walker Red is your Jack Daniels of Scotch or something. So like that's a good kind of way to look at it. But with most Scotch, I have the same rules I do with bourbon. I try to get higher ABV when I can. There's a lot of good Scotches at 46%. I like to 46 is usually as high or as low as I like to go. But I'm not going to, I won't lie. There's some good 40% ABV Scotches, not 40% ABV. So it's kind of like that,
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to definitely just run into the same kind of things you run into with bourbons on that lower end for sure.
And there's some lower, I call it octane, the ABV. There's some lower octane bourbons that
for sure
that have notes to them, but they're always fewer noted, that they're higher ones. And Basil Hayden's, I mean, it's God, I always feel like I'm committing a felony or something when I spend that much for an 80-something% or 80-something proof bourbon.
Yeah. The Basil Hayden is interesting because it's one of those that I recall. Like I remember when I first got a bottle of it, it was like, oh, I'm buying something fancy. It was like $38, something like that. You look at the bottle, it's like it's got that paper thing over it, and then you drink it. I mean, it's not bad, but again, it's nothing that interesting in hindsight. It's a lot of sweet butterscotch, honey, caramel, vanilla kind of thing. And then you look back on it and you're like, wow, for that price, there's so many other bourbons now with the benefit of experience that I would buy over that in a second. And, once you kind of get to that point, I think after you've tried a lot of things, it's hard to go back to just justifying buying things at 40% ABV when they're not, if it's anything above like an entry level, it's hard to spend more if it's 40%. Yeah. I mean, I've purchased some scotches that were like 16 years old. One was an Aberlour 16-year-old, and this is in my earlier days. It was 40%. It was one of the more disappointing whiskeys I'd ever had. But the other thing with high ABV is that you wonder how much the yearning to put out cask strength stuff or high ABV stuff can be used also as a way to mask less than stellar casks. With bourbon or with Scotch, right? You just jack up the ABV more. You could use up those tired casks and.
Yeah, I think bourbon has to be below 130.
Right.
Now I know I keep sipping on this Booker's, and I was sipping on the Elijah Craig. I can tell you, and I was just hammering them back and forth there for a few seconds, but I get a lot more tongue burn, like the singe off of the Elijah Craig barrel proof than I do the Booker's. But there's this candy note I'm getting out of the Booker's, and it's a savory sweet. And I was trying to get it in my head, like, what the hell is this note? And it reminds me of one or two things. One is like teriyaki beef, like that kind of sweet.
Okay.
Or I used to make like game hens, and I would stuff an apple inside and make like with the cinnamon and sugar and all of that, and make apple pie game hen, roasted game hens, and then rub the savory seasoning under the skin and let it all, cook on the spit. But that's kind of what Booker's, at least the 2019-03, is reminding me of, is like a sweet savory type.
Well, you said it was called Country Ham, right?
Yeah. But I think
is there any clove note on that? I wonder if that name is associated a lot with that flavor, because that sounds sort of like like a Black Forest ham type thing or something.
Yeah, it does. And we would do the pineapple glaze on the ham, like spiral cut ham or whatever. But I always picture a salty note, when I think of ham.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. I was thinking about.
Oh.
I'm curious how far it's going to go with the Bookers, and before I don't know if you've had like their 25-year-old, but they've been doing like a 30. There's like a 30th anniversary, a 25th anniversary. I'm wondering how far it's going to go with terms of like age if they start releasing some older stuff you know, some of these releases they put out, but doing them at like 10, 12 years old, which would be a real treat.
That would be good. Yeah, I'm always excited. Now, you know, there's a balance, you know, and when you have these new oak barrels, depending on the number char you use on the inside, and if you've never seen it, I've seen a couple of videos on where the distilleries how they do it, and they have all these empty barrels rolling down, and they're not capped, and
Yeah.
so they roll down, and they have a deal on the conveyor that stops them, and this flamethrower just
Yeah.
and when they turn the char up, it just goes longer, you know, before it stops and lets the next barrel come up, and then you know hits it. And so that you know they can set it like a number 4 char, number 6 char,
Right.
and that's the way the Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. They Woodford Reserve Double Oaked is exactly Woodford that has been aged a little bit longer in a heavily charred oak barrel.
Yeah. Yeah, very similar to what you see with like some of the like double barreled or like the, you know, yeah, that one's double oak, but like it's like what's the one I'm thinking of? Heaven's Door has like a double barreled American whiskey. You see like this now that's just come out, the toasted oak,
Yep.
Elijah Craig, which just came out, which is again just like putting it into another brand new barrel for like
Yep.
an additional 6 months, and I think it, you know, supposed to maybe give it some more of the like kind of creaminess, a bit of that like dark barrel char. Yeah, that's there's a couple of those. You know, I'm trying to think back on which ones I've actually got to have. I did have the Heaven's Door, which I liked quite a bit. Have you had any like in particular that you found that were really good? Anything that's been like double barrel, double oak? Yeah, I mean the Woodford is solid.
Yeah, I mean, I like if I'm out. I tell you though, if they have sometimes if they have Bullet, I'll get that over regular Woodford Reserve, just because Woodford Reserve to me is a candied bourbon. You know, it's so sweet. And sometimes I like, now I will say it's a darker, you know, I give it some of those fig notes or whatever, you know, you can pull out of, especially the double oaked. Now I can get deeper into the even like a roasted fruit, you know, note out of that double oaked. And I enjoy Woodford Reserve, and I only buy the double oaked because it's only $5 more, you know. And so when you're talking about $48 or 50, you know, $3,
Yeah.
I'll just grab the double oaked, and because I think you get a few more notes out of it and a few darker notes. Now,
Agreed.
I'm not a fan of finished bourbons, you know, by and large. I do have them, and I have reviewed them. Angel's Envy being one,
Yeah.
and the Burning Chair. I have a bottle of that up there. It depends on the mood I'm in, but I just think you take this decent bourbon and then you just taint the flavor. You know, that's what it tastes like.
Yeah, you know, the thing about what I tend to notice with bourbon and the finishes, unlike Scotch, where barley I think just works better with wine finishes in the way that it allows them to really showcase themselves and kind of be vibrant and bring all their own complexity. With bourbon, the sweetness of the corn can just be so strong that it doesn't always add a lot, but other than how much the bottle costs. So Angel's Envy is a great example. That's the port wine finish. It's a port wine finished bourbon. I think, what is it? Maybe 50% ABV. Totally good stuff. It does have a like a little more of a kind of sticky, cloying cherry fruit thing at the end. But you know, 50, $55, something like that. I don't know if it's a whiskey I'd go back to necessarily. It might not be bad for a cocktail, but
I think there's a time and place for it. It's 43.3%.
Oh, wow.
86.6 proof. You know,
Yeah.
and I call it a dessert bourbon. You know, so you know this is a good one. All of these that are below 90 are the ones like tonight. When we're done with this, I'm not busting beer open But if I have a snifter of this, and uh, which I don't, you can see how full it is. I haven't really messed with it too
Make an
much.
old fashioned. That could probably stand up okay in old fashioned, but I don't know.
So if I make an old fashioned, I want rye.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. Totally. Maybe a Manhattan.
Yeah, maybe.
But
But I tell you what, I've gotten away from. I used to drink Maker's Old Fashioned. If I were out and their top shelf wasn't, they didn't have a top shelf. You know.
right, yeah, no, I don't. I mean, they have the cast strength of 46, and then just the regular, right? Plus, that's a weeder, isn't it? It's all.
Yeah, I mean it's all right. I only get the 46, which has the French oak staves. But I watched a live. It was a well done, like not our kind of live stream. I'm talking about studio cameras and all of that, but it was streaming live, and they had a big panel up there, and they were talking about the Maker's Mark finished bourbons that you can go in and buy a barrel. Now, of course, they're thousands of dollars, but if you get a bunch of people together, you can go in off the street and buy a barrel, and they have all of these different ways you can finish the bourbon, and they let you try different barrels, and then you pick the barrel you want to buy, and then you figure out how you want to finish it. And what they do is they have shorter staves, and they uncap it and put the staves in and recap it and let it age. So they're not changing it from one barrel to another.
Yep. So that's exactly. I have a bottle just like that I bought from a store who did a bunch of picks like that, where it was like they, on the back of the label, there's like of these Maker's Mark, like 6 different staves or whatever, and it marks which ones they put in.
Right.
Fucking, French oak, whatever. What are the notes you're going to get off of this, et cetera, et cetera. Yep.
But they'll put freaking orange peel in there if you want them to, and they have, all kind of stuff. And I used to brew beer for a little while. I mean, I dabbled in it. I certainly wasn't a brewmaster or anything, but I had the bucket, I had the Star San to sanitize everything, and I had,
Sure.
the wort cooler and a turkey fryer, burner with the big bucket, and I'd do my wort. But I had a application on my computer that I could sit there and slide how much of this hops or whatever I wanted in it. And then it would tell you when to put it in. It's always a 1 hour boil,
Yeah.
So if you have a 45-minute hop, it's going to be pretty hoppy. But if you have a 15-minute hop, then,
right.
it's not as much as flavor is going to come out. But that's where I've messed with like dried orange peel and things like that, and I made my wife graduated from University of Texas, UT, and of course burnt orange. So I made a Longhorn ale, and that's when I put the orange peels in, and I was trying to get a fruity hop, and but I brewed it to be a dark orange, and came out pretty good. But my favorite one I ever made was a James Blonde. And it was 7% by volume. So,
man, I had a couple friends that were into that. He made like a mango IPA once that was pretty impressive. But he, he got pretty serious in it too. He's doing it for a couple of years. But so, what do you think about jumping into this Four Roses?
Yeah, the single barrel.
Yeah, why don't we? We're gonna shift gears and chat Four Roses. So we're just at about the top of the hour. Just want to say hi to everybody again. Happy Sunday Fun Day. Eric the Malt Muser here in Philly. I'm with Bourbon Bounty coming at us from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Do take a sec. You're into bourbon, go check out his channel. Hit subscribe. He's doing great videos. Give him some support. Give him some love. You can always, of course, kick me some support too if you're enjoying the program. Hit the thumbs up. I've set up a Patreon page as well if y'all are into that. It is in the description of the link. Appreciate all the support and everybody hanging out tonight. And we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk some Four Roses. So, Four Roses, another one of my favorite distilleries coming out of the bourbon scene in Kentucky. And you have in your hand the single barrel release, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, this is. It gives a warehouse number, but that doesn't mean squadouche to me.
Right.
It's 50% by volume. Warehouse JW batch number or barrel number 18.3E, which means nothing to me either. I
Yep.
haven't, I haven't been there. I do know though that this contains, of course, it contains 51% corn, right? At
Yep.
least, and I think it's closer to 60% corn on this one, but it has 36% rye.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so, what's interesting to me about Four Roses is the way they do. I mean, first of all, I think it's one of the better single barrel whiskeys you can get at the price point. I mean, the one that you have in your hand, that's a $45 bottle, 50% ABV, high rye. It's got, to me, the rye just adds more complexity to bourbon, which I really enjoy. They also have a small batch, which is like, I don't know, that $30 range, also really, really good. And then their standard yellow label. I mean, so their core range is solid bourbon all the way around, but they have a ton of special releases. But what's really interesting about Four Roses, and so what I have is also a single barrel, but this is actually from their store pick program. As many of you all know, Knob Creek, Elijah Craig, Weller, whatever. A lot of stores will be picking their own barrels. And so what I have here is a Four Roses. This is a single barrel strength, 57.1%. And this is a 9-year, 7-month-old whiskey. So the interesting thing about what Four Roses does with their private select barrel proof releases is there's 10 different mash bills. So the single barrel that you have right now is called OBSV. The B indicates the high rye. Mm-hmm. So there's an OBSV, there's an OBSQ, there's an OBSK, there's an OBSF, there's an OBSO. There's also OESV, OESK, et cetera, et cetera. So this one is OESK. So the E actually indicates the low rye mash bill. So unlike yours, which is at 36% rye, this is 20% rye. And then the K indicates a spicy yeast. So there's 5 different yeast strains they use for each of the 2 different mash bills, high rye, low rye, which is, I think, really cool. I actually also have like a 11.5-year-old one with the Q yeast strain. But it's one of the things I really think is, gives Four Roses some uniqueness in terms of the barrel proofs they release. They're all store picks, so people are just picking barrels. They're picking the mash bill they want. They're picking the recipe, bottling it up at whatever year age. The thing about them is most of the time you're going to have to find them in a shop. They're not always easy to find, but you can sometimes. There's some stores that just do these on the regular. But, they're in that $70 to $90 range, really, depending on where you are. And so this one, as I mentioned, this is OESK, 9 years, 7 months. And so I'm going to put this in the glass, and we'll sip some Four Roses.
All right. Now, this is one of my favorite ones. Like I said, I like a higher rye with like if I'm going to make an old fashioned or something. And if you haven't done it, now I typically drink my bourbon neat. But there is it's called a basil fashion. Okay. You take a basil leaf and you muddle it in the glass and then pull it back out. And then you pour your bourbon in it. And, well, you can leave the basil leaf in there, but a lot of times they'll lay the basil leaf on top because, it's garnish. But you can leave it in the bottom. But you pour the bourbon in there and then you put it and you smoke it, right? You have a smoke gun. And a lot of times people will use a Booker's box with the slide up and down, drill a little hole in the back for the little smoke gun to come in, and it holds the smoke in pretty good, and smoke it for a little bit, and then pull it out, and then you've already mixed it and everything. It's not a cold drink; it's a warmer.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. So you shake it and you put it in there, but by the time you smoke it and everything, it's chilled a little, but it's on the warmer side, and it brings out more of those notes. But it's a smoked basil, but it doesn't have. It has the simple syrup in it, just barely shake a dash of bitters in it. Don't really go heavy-handed on that. I've had them. I haven't made one here, but I think this would stand up really well. At least the release I have, you
Yeah.
know, on it would stand up really well to that. Now, if I'm doing a regular old-fashioned simple syrup, muddle a maraschino cherry and orange peel or something.
Yeah.
I like straight rye whiskey.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on that. Anybody in the chat a fan of the Four Roses? Be interested to hear what you guys think of the single barrel or any of the barrel proof releases. If you're a fan of the small batch, any of those. I know they have a new one, Small Batch Select, which is out, which is a mix of like 4 of the 10 different Four Roses recipes that they have, which is supposed to be quite good. And you're starting to see it on the shelves pretty regularly now. At least
I saw it when I went to buy this bottle, and I have the regular one. And I always say the regular Four Roses small batch is an underpriced bourbon. I think that I would pay in the 40s for it here. Now, prices vary,
Yeah.
but here it's about $35, for 750 milliliter. All the prices I quote 750 milliliter.
Right.
So the select I think is a little more, but if it's as good, and even a little bit better, then I think it's still well worth it.
Do you? How do you compare? This isn't your first bottle of the Four Roses single barrel, I'm assuming.
Oh no. Well, you can see how much is left in it, and this is my third bottle.
How do you? I mean, comparatively, would you go more for the small batch or for the single barrel?
A single barrel, all day. I do like the small batch, and I think but it doesn't have the same rye content. It's a lower rye. I think maybe they use some of the higher rye in it, when they blend it, but it's a blend. So, it's hard to nail down the mash bill and age and all of that when it's a blend. You could have different aged bourbons. You could have different mash bills coming together.
Sure.
I do enjoy blends. Old Elk, the Jefferson's very small blend, very small batch blend.
Yep.
One of my favorites is Old Elk, and then the Breckenridge out of Colorado.
And that's the thing with the small batch. I mean, it's there's no actual legal definition for folks who don't know about what small batch means. They can call anything small batch if they want. It could be anywhere from like 5 barrels to 500 barrels in theory.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, we got a few folks that have joined us. Let's just say hi quick. Santa Cruzin is in the house. What's up, friend? Happy Sunday fun day to you, sir. Good to see you. Good to see you. Mark Stengel says he has the small batch right now that he got for, looks like, I just lost it, $34. So good price on that for sure.
That's about what I pay here. Yeah.
I hear you on that. So the one I have right now, as I mentioned, let me just show you guys what this one looks like. This is what the Four Roses barrel proof single barrel label looks like. And then they usually have a label on the side with the info about the mash bill and everything. So this is, again, the lower rye mash, which is what's kind of compelling about this one, Bounty, is this is supposed to be the spicy yeast strain.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, you're right. And so while it is the low rye, it's like compensating a bit with this other type of spice, which is like cinnamon red hot. Which is what you're getting with that kind of like right on the edge. It's got this nice spice to it. This is really fantastic stuff. I've been sitting on this bottle for like over a year and a half, and I'm just happy to open it here tonight. But I am a huge fan of the regular single barrel. That, along with the Knob Creek single barrel, I think are the best values in bourbon, period. Like for 40, 45 bucks, you can get either one of those. They're high ABV. They got decent age. In the case of the Knob Creek, it's something in the words like 9 years. It's awesome. Haven't had that one.
When you said cinnamon,
you know what I mean about this? It's like the cinnamon red hot candy.
Yeah. I call this hot damn. I was like, No, it's good, but it does hit you with a cinnamon note right off the bat.
Yeah, this one, it's got that going quite a bit. The other thing that I'm getting off this is something that I get off of Wild Turkey and Wild Turkey only, which is that cotton candy marshmallow note, or like cherry cola, that kind of, or that cherry candy. A lot of that going on, but then there's just this amazing like whipped cream vanilla thing happening.
Wow.
A little bit of banana. There's some apple. There's spice. It's just everything is working fantastic with this. I can't say enough. I mean, they're a little bit on the pricey side, and you should always check the ages. If you go into a shop and they got 3 or 4 of these Four Roses, different batches of the Four Roses single barrel, do read the tag to learn a little bit about what the mash bill is, because it does tell you a bit about like what you can expect from each yeast strain, but also check the age. Like this is 9 years, 7 months, which is pretty good, but I've seen these in the low 8s. I've also seen them high as 13 years.
Yeah,
You can really get some age
This is
stuff.
the only bottle of bourbon I'll leave the tag on.
Yeah. For me, that's the sweet spot for bourbon for me. I mean, and for the Scotch drinkers in the house who maybe don't drink as much bourbon, because of from my understanding, and I think maybe you can add to this, but it's about the climate, right? Obviously Kentucky, United States, further south, so the warmer climate actually causes that aging process to happen much more quickly, which is why aged rums, or you can get good aged rums or tequilas are like just a couple of years old. In the case of bourbon, for me, it's like that kind of 8 to 13 year range is like perfect. I've not had a lot of stuff older than that. What I have had, I found to be just kind of too oaky, but again, small sample size. Whereas with Scotch, 18 years old Scotch is much different than 18-year-old bourbon.
Well, and that's because they typically use bourbon barrels. It's already aged something, and it's already drawn out a lot of the tannins, from the wood.
Yeah.
And so that barrel is now mellowed. It's not going to give up the wood ghosts as easy.
That reminds me, there are some first fill bourbon scotches first fill bourbon barrel scotches I think you might like. Balvenie has a really good single barrel 12-year. I think there's a Glenfiddich 14-year-old bourbon cask that might be first fill. That's good, but I digress. Back to the Four Roses. What else you got going on that?
Well, I can tell you, even though I know the rye is high in this, it does not come through as punchy as some other high ryes. And when you said marshmallow sweet, that helps hide some of that spicy note off that rye. It is giving me a pretty sweet kick.
Yeah.
Now, I've had this bottle a little bit. The flavor has probably modified itself, having a lot of air in the bottle. Bourbon does not go bad in the bottle, but it can lose some intensity, and the notes can change over time.
Oh, yeah.
So it may have lost some of its rye kick.
Yeah, that makes sense. This one, I only on the tail end of the finish am I getting a little bit of that rye. Again, this one's 20%, so lower on the rye mash bill. Definitely sweeter on the corn, and then of course this supposed spicier yeast strain is again giving it this kind of nice, sweet, hot pop at the end of the development, which I'm enjoying quite a bit. I mean, it's just another stellar whiskey of theirs. They, of course, also, and I don't know how many of these you've had, they do those special releases every year. They're like real hard to get allocated. Yeah. There's a couple of them. They're, a couple $100.
Yeah, I've only recently found this ABC store in Moxville. And the only thing that makes this ABC store different is the lady that's the president of the board, like I mentioned earlier, is a bourbon fan. Big bourbon head. She knows a lot about bourbon, and she can order all of this stuff, and get it special order. And they only have 2 stores associated with that board. So whereas in Winston-Salem, there's 10 stores, and there's one board, and they don't give you the time of day. And there's bourbons that they'll say are available in North Carolina, but they won't order them. And if you try to get them to order them, they'll tell you they won't. Like I said, they just ignore you. But there, I can walk in, talk to her, And yeah, I'll get you a bottle of it. So there's things that, I can go
It
on.
is to have a good relationship with a storekeep, man. That's for sure.
Yep. And she's not running this huge board for, a bunch of stores. So, it's because it's county, and Forsyth County is what Winston-Salem's in. It's big. And anytime you have cities within a county, bigger like Charlotte and Greensboro and Raleigh, and all of that, the boards, they're going to have a lot more stores.
Yeah.
And, Curious
if you get a good juicy fruit note on this at all.
Yeah. There's one thing I want to do though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go pull that whistle pig over here. That's 100% rye, and I just want to.
10-year.
What's that? Yeah, the 10, 100, 100.
Go for it, man. I wasn't a huge fan of the whistle pig when I had it. It was solid. I remember it feeling like it was kind of pricey for what you were.
It was, and I don't really.
They have a lot of special
catastrophe happen. I hooked my foot on my light boom, and I pulled it down, and I think I may have broken something here.
Uh-oh. Technical difficulties in the Bounty Cave.
Yeah, hang on. Let me fix my light.
No, you're good, man. In the meantime, let's catch up. What's up, everybody? Good to hang out on a Tuesday. Just kidding. A Sunday. I will be back on Tuesday, though, of course, as always. But nice to see folks on a Sunday. I've seen a couple faces I don't get to see a lot, including Welsh Toro, man. Thanks for swinging by. Santa Cruzing as well. Must be catching you on an off day, my friend. Great to have you in the house. So a little preview. This Tuesday, Telix, the Whiskey Tech, and I are going to do a joint tasting of a Balvenie 12-year-old single barrel. So that should be a lot of fun. So we were just kind of talking about bourbony scotches. That'll be what we're tasting up on Tuesday. So be awesome to see folks swing by for that. You going in? Oh, this is the Whistle Pig. Did you open it?
What's that?
You just opening that?
No, I've had two tiny little sniffers of it. I paid over $100 for this. I don't want to drink it up, and I don't want to get too much air in the bottle. And I bought it before COVID hit, and then now I can't share.
Right.
I really want to hang on to this for like a Christmas, holiday get together, and because it is fantastic for now. Yeah, it is pricey. And again, I don't really.
By you.
What's that?
What does a bottle of that go for in your neck of the woods?
A little over 100, right around 100. When I reviewed it as a bonus video, and I said, they call it the 10, 100, 100 because it's 100% rye, or it's aged 10 years, 100% rye, and it's 100 proof. And I said, but they should add another 100 because that's how much it costs. So
yeah, right.
Now it's not the Boss Hog, which goes for closer to $400.
Yeah, that's so much. What is the deal with the Boss Hog? Is there some type of finish on it or something?
No, just a long age.
This is the age. Okay.
Yeah. I haven't tried it. I mean, this is good. And I was saying about I'm a big fan, and I know it's a lot of mixed reviews on it, but I'm a huge fan of Blade and Bow. And Blade and Bow is one I have here, but I have two more bottles over there, as backups. I drink it freely. It's one of my, if I'm not going to set up the studio and go through all that, it's just one I like to have a snifter of. And they do what and they don't have a patent on it. I mean, there's other Solera aged bourbons, but right. They leave a little bourbon in the bottom of each barrel, and then they transfer it to the new barrel and then put new on top of it. So it's sort of like the infinity bottle type thing, where
Right.
you always have some of the older age stuff. And that's going to blend with the new stuff and it's going to age a little more. And I know I don't believe anything about, well, we're preserving some of the original whatever. No, that's been gone, right? And
Right.
it's sort of like, well, I'm 1/2 of 2% Cherokee or something. I'm not Cherokee, but there might be some 0.008 or something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but you can't. That doesn't mean anything. Um, so, but I do like the notes on it. It is one that's reasonably priced. It's around 55-ish dollars and I get some of the best leather and tobacco notes out of that thing. Deep molasses notes, come through. A
Yeah, that
lot
seems
of
to
good
be
flavor.
a recurring theme. Like you seem to really like your palate is really into the dark molasses and the rye spice. So I can kind of see what you're saying. I mean, you were
Yep.
mentioning earlier with the Bookers a little bit, like kind of what your wheelhouse is. It
Right.
sounds like this one's right up your alley.
Well, and to be just completely honest, I love cigars, and I love good cigars. And I also like grassy, earthy notes and things. I mean, I grew up hunting and fishing. And if it was warm outside and it was the weekend, we were in a boat.
Sure.
And if it was cold outside and it was the weekend, we had a gun in our hand. We were shooting something, and squirrel hunting, deer hunting, rabbit hunting. Had rabbit dogs, little beagles, and we would, deer camp was a big thing. So any of that type of stuff, and they sow oats up and down like power lines. They'll they they put a power line through the woods and they cut big alleyway for that, and they would get in there and till that up and sow oats to attract the deer to come out. And so all those wildflowers and honeysuckles and wild oats and things like that growing. You know, whiskey is something that you get what notes you get and it reminds you and it triggers emotions in your head. And so I think I have an infinity for certain notes, and it just because it reminds me of good times, my youth, and all of that. So there
Yeah,
is no good
man.
or bad note there. There is no right or wrong. If you get something from the bourbon or the whiskey, that's what you get, you know.
Yeah. Speaking of some of that North Carolina life, man, our friend Jack the Pickled Hound asks,
Oh, that's
does filibuster bourbon get any respect in North Carolina?
I have not seen it here at all.
You've never heard of that one?
Mm-mm. And I've read a lot about bourbons.
So my Yankee ass is going to meet you with the rye, and what I have here is a Dad's Hat.
Oh, now I've heard of Dad's
This is
Hat.
a Pennsylvania straight rye whiskey. This is at barrel proof. What is the ABV? 61.2 single barrel cask strength. So, story about Pennsylvania rye is that Pennsylvania rye is characterized as being only rye and barley. So there's no corn in it. They don't use any corn in any of their whiskey. So that's kind of the Pennsylvania rye style.
Right.
Have you got a chance to ever have any of this before, or any of the Pennsylvania rye whiskeys?
No, I haven't seen it on the shelf here, but I have heard of it, and I'd like to try it for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious if this actually. I'm not sure how far their distribution goes on this whiskey in particular, but it's about 4 years old, so relatively decent age. I'm going to put a little bit of this in the glass. As you can see, I've been putting a little dent in this, but they are just outside where I am. So I'm in Philadelphia. They're just up the road in Bristol, Pennsylvania, which is right on the Delaware River between New Jersey and PA. So I'd love to be able to get the chance to go there once this coronavirus thing finally abates. They'll be open. I'd love to do a tour. Ooh. Wow.
Man, I can tell you that Whistle Pig, that 10 years, that, and now, of course, Whistle Pig doesn't distill.
Right. It's all like MGP, right?
Yeah, they procure Canadian whiskey, rye whiskey.
Right. Like
And
Alberta Premium or something.
they blend it, barrel it, age it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Give me just 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Mm.
Thing was coming disconnected over here.
Mm.
So, yeah, I've actually also never had filibuster before. So I'm actually not sure what. Are they coming? Are they out of North Carolina? Jack, maybe you know. Oh, they're from VA. Oh, so they're from not too far from you, just to the north in Virginia.
Now, I don't suspect they do get any respect because I've never seen it.
Must be more on the up and coming side.
Now, we do have a local bourbon section, and they do include Virginia bourbons in that local section. But the Bowman Brothers and that one is, they keep it away from that section. But there are some Virginia bourbons, but I've never seen filibuster over there.
Yeah. Provide. What do you shifting gears a little bit? Do you have anything that like releases you're looking forward this year on the bourbon front that you're licking your chops waiting for to come out, or are you still kind of just picking up things as you see it?
I pick up whatever I can get my hands on. If I don't have a bottle of it and I see it, I buy it. You know. Now, again, though, my channel is more about the sub 100. You know.
Sure.
And I would like to keep it around that 80-ish range and below. And like I said earlier, I don't want anyone to have to mortgage, get a second mortgage or sell their car to buy a bourbon to try. So, you know, there are some that I'm looking forward to, seasonal releases, especially in the fall, things like that, that I try to, you know, stay up on and know when they're going to hit and try to get lucky enough to be there to buy a bottle of it. I do know that some people around here, and I'm not trying to dog anybody, but there's a few bourbons in North Carolina that North Carolinians rave over that just aren't as good. They're just not complex bourbons. So I think the palate around here has a lot. They like more vanilla bourbon.
Right.
And I'm saying that in two ways. They like the vanilla kick, but they also just want vanilla notes. You know, and I'm not saying everybody, but I think, you know, when you're stocking a store, you're trying to appease the biggest customer base.
Right. Right.
And the lady in Moxville, you know, she has the basic stuff over here, and then, but the bourbon corner, I call it, is just packed with all variations of things.
Mm-hmm.
And if she can get it, she will. But she only has so much shelf space. She doesn't really have dusty bottles because there's a lot of people that know about Moxville, and they drive, you know, a couple hours to get there. And so she knows she's going to sell.
Right. Right.
Everybody kind of converges there. So your bourbon heads go to Moxville. Everybody else just buys what's on the shelf.
Yeah. So you're what you said about like kind of keeping the price in consideration on the whiskeys you review. Yeah. I mean, I definitely I include cost in like what I give my review scores for, because I like you am like, for the most, you know, for the average folks like us who are just going out trying to get a good whiskey for a good price, like price matters. You know, it can be the most quality thing in the world and be way too expensive, or conversely, it can be like the worst whiskey in the world but over branded and you want to buy it. So I like to like consider cost in like how I basically score things.
Right.
But I'm curious, you know, somebody mentioned earlier that there were a lot of good bourbons in the 80 or less range. Mm-hmm. What bourbons for you? Well, let's put it this way: what are the bourbons that you've spent the most on that you think were worth the money?
Well, for me, one is that Booker's, and that's, you know, the highest one I've reviewed. Wasn't that impressed with Antique 107. Paid too much for that. So we'll get that out of the way. I think it's basically Weller's with a red label on it. You know, there's maybe a few more notes, but, you know.
Yeah.
nothing too big. The ones I've spent the money on, I think all of the Wild Turkey line, I think it's fair priced. So the Russell's Reserve and the actually the Russell Reserve single barrel is a lot pricier than the Russell's Reserve 10-year,
Yeah, it is.
but the 10-year is great.
Yeah.
You know, now is the Russell's Reserve single barrel better? Okay, maybe a little, but is it
Rye.
really that much better?
Rye is special.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have overpaid for bourbon for sure. Um, I'm really interested to get more Old Foresters, you know, down there, and I know that they'll run you above 50 for sure.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Prohibition edition and the Old Fine are both really, really good.
yeah. But Eagle Rare, if you can get your hands on it, is fantastic, right?
It's only like 40, right? I mean, that's like a $40 bottle.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you can't find it on the shelf, right? Because it flies off the shelf. And I think around here it's about $40 if you can find it. Now, if you cannot find Eagle Rare, the regular old Michter's small batch, the US one, you know, the regular old small batch bourbon.
Yep.
This stands up. You can drink them side by side. And I think Eagle Rare comes across with a few more notes and it's a little darker, you know. But from one day to the next, if I blinded you with these, I don't think you'd be able to tell them apart.
They still have the 10-year age statement on the Eagle Rare?
No. When they came out with that 17, let's see. Oh, age 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that it's like written in the back real small.
Yeah, it's age 10 years. Yeah. Yeah, and it's darker. I mean, you can tell it's a darker amber than the Michter's, but I think the Michter's is a damn fine bourbon. I think it's worth every penny. If you can't get Eagle Rare. Now, if you can get Eagle Rare and it's a good price, don't get the Michter's. You know.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've had an Eagle Rare. It might be something I got to revisit. I mean, when I think of the ones that there aren't very many bourbons that I've spent a lot of money on. I mean, I spent $100 on the Orphan Barrel 24, the Rhetoric 24. I sort of regret that. I didn't find it to be that amazing. It was kind of over oaked and not great. The ones, so Jefferson's Ocean cast strength, I've paid like in the 85 range for. I like that whiskey a lot. I'm not sure it's worth it. Have you ever had the Jefferson's Ocean before?
Oh, I dog on Jefferson's Ocean.
Really? Oh man, the cast strength was
okay. The cast strength, maybe, but for $80 freaking dollars, when I can get a Jefferson's Reserve,
right?
And it's okay. The Jefferson's Ocean. You really have to convince yourself that it's worth the money.
Yep.
You really have to work hard to
get. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was better than the small batch, but I don't think it was $50 better than the small batch. You know what I mean? Right.
No, and when you compare it to the Reserve, which is about $50 or whatever here, you know, not the small batch, but the very old, very small batch Reserve, this for $30 less, you know, if Jefferson's Ocean is worth any more, maybe $5 to $10 more, but not 30.
Yeah, I mean, they got a whole thing, right? I mean, it's clearly like, I think a little bit more marketing fluff than anything. But I will say that the cast strength, and they also have a Jefferson's Ocean wheated, which I haven't messed with. I'm not big on the wheated bourbon, but I prefer a little rye in it if I can get it. But the Jefferson's Ocean cast strength, here's the thing. I thought it was really good bourbon. The problem was I got it on sale for like $75. Normal price, it's like $90 to $100, which I think is just so much for what is arguably kind of a good marketing gimmick, you know?
Okay, here's though. Let me show you, and I refuse to put it on this shelf. because I don't want people thinking I'm endorsing this bourbon. Okay. So let me show you it, and then I'll show you this one.
Sure.
Okay? So this is the most overpriced that. No,
Is he going to bring out Weller 12 year, y'all? I think it's going to be Weller 12.
no.
I have a couple ideas what it might be if it ain't Weller 12.
Right. Ta-da-da-da.
Oh, okay. Which
Not for $90. No way.
really?
No way. If you tell me that, see where to go. Yeah, here it is. If you tell me that this is $50 better than this, I will tell you need to readjust your taste and nose.
Which barrel is that?
This is it's cast strength, but it's not. Okay. It's 112.5 proof.
Uh-huh.
Okay, 56.25. I have some 50% bourbons. They don't claim to be cast strength. This is and again, now barrel, they don't distill. They purchase, I think. We hand selected and married these bourbons, right? So they buy bourbons from distilleries and blend them. And I looked it up before and I can't remember, and I don't want to give bad information here. But I think Heaven Hill is one of them that they get a barrel from or something. And there's a few different distilleries. It is good. Okay. It's good, but it's not $100 good. And this is definitely, this is $50 good right here. You know. And get to these.
Why is barrel so expensive? They're blends.
That's because they want to charge it.
I
guarantee you, these guys are of the I had a buddy of mine, and I do tech for a living. I do computer security and stuff like that. And back when before I became a guy that just does administrative BS, I used to play the keyboard, and I was a forensic expert. And a buddy of mine was doing forensics, and of course, small knit community, we know each other, and we worked together on a couple of jobs. And he decided to go get his Juris Doctorate, right? So he was studying for his law degree because he wanted to have that so that he could say, get more jobs and build more, for the work. And so while he was studying for that, he jumped his hourly rate to this astronomical price. It went from like $250, $300 an hour. And when I say that, keep in mind, this is complete contract work.
Right.
No benefits. He's buying all of his own health insurance, everything.
Right.
And these are short stints. So he'll charge, $30,000 for a whatever. And he has to keep booking these. So that's how that works. And so he jumped his price up to over like close to $500 an hour. And he started getting calls just like bang, 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 because people kind of equate, you get what you pay for.
Right.
And when it's companies and you have some director or some executive in some company is like, oh, I want the expensive one. He's going to be good. It's not his money,
Right. Yeah. Real talk, man. Real talk.
And I think that's where they're coming from here. This is a boutique blend, and I just don't think it's worth it.
So I have one bottle of barrel. It is a cast strength Canadian rye, 13 years old, that I paid $95 for.
Yep.
It is real good. I don't know if it's $100 good, but a 13-year-old rye, I was like, it's Canadian rye. So, it's basically Alberta premium rye whiskey, but 13 years, I felt like the age statement was there. It's like 64%. I was like, oh, hell yeah, I got to get this. And that one, I think, delivered. But I've been hesitant and pretty gun shy on the bourbons. And mostly because I'm like, I just look at it and I'm like, I don't know, 10 years, okay, it's 53%, whatever, but it's like $90. I'm like, man. And I've held back. So I know they have a lot of batch variation, but it's obviously they do different batches that they put out, but clearly it doesn't sound like that was the worst decision I ever made, is to avoid that.
Well, here's, if you want a bourbon, now I think they've changed the labeling on these things, but you can look up the Duke. This, it talks on the back about it's distilled old style or whatever, but I'm always looking for something that is different.
Yeah.
And this I call the fruit salad of bourbon right here. This is a fruit bomb.
I haven't heard of that one.
Oh my God, this is so good. And I just remember watching all these old cowboy movies, where they pull the bottle out and tunk, and get them a slug of it. And,
yeah.
If it tastes like that all day long, it wouldn't be hard to do. It would not be hard to do.
Good stuff. I got about 10 minutes left in me for the night. And so before we head off, I'd love to hear 3 mid-price bourbons that you think people should be looking out for when they go shopping, because I know a lot of folks that tune in, we do talk a lot of bourbon, but I'm always got more scotch than anything usually going on the on my channel, and so I'm always looking for bourbon recommendations. So we'd love to hear if you got like 3 or so that you would say, if you see these on your shelf, pick them up. They're good price and they're good value. Yeah, maybe the Duke is one of them.
Well, and some of them aren't going to be hard to find. One of my ones I really, really like is just the Wild Turkey Rare Breed barrel proof.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great bourbon for what they charge for it. Personally, like I said, mixed reviews. I really, really like the Blade & Bow. I think if you haven't tried it, give it a try. If you're a Woodford fan, go ahead and spend a few extra bucks and get the double oaked and try them side by side, because you're going to get better notes out of that double oaked one.
So you heard it straight from the Bounty in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Wild Turkey Rare Breed.
Blade & Bow.
Blade & Bow. That's what it's called. I almost meant the name of that.
If you can get your hands on it, Eagle freaking Rare.
An Eagle Rare. Yeah.
Yep.
That's good to hear, man. Eagle Rare was one of those first bottles of bourbon I got back when they were like $30 a piece. It's been a long time since I've had some Eagle Rare, and you're inspiring me to check that out. The other one that you've mentioned more than once tonight, which I've not had and is now on my radar screen, is going to be the Old Elk.
Oh yeah, that's.
And Santa Cruzan actually just mentioned here in the chat, really good juice, impressed off the bat, or I should say at first taste. That's good to know. That's one I've not. I've seen it. I've never pulled the trigger on it, but sounds like it's a good way to go.
Now, from year to year, I don't know. Now it is a lower proof. It's 88. Now I say lower, but I judge everything off of a 90.
Okay, sure.
Right. So if it's 90 proof, I call that just a good base bourbon. But this, you can have an extra snifter. It's that good.
You said 43?
It's 44%.
Oh, 40. Yeah. Oh, interesting. 44. Okay.
Yeah. But no, they do a really good job with their blend.
And is that high rye, low rye?
It's a mix, of course, but you're going to get, there's a lot of complexity in it. And of course, that's what I'm looking for too, is something that can take me on that joyride, and as you keep picking it, you're picking up different notes here and there.
Sounds good. Well, you heard it, man.
I mentioned Breckenridge too.
Yeah, you have. And Breckenridge is one of those that I've seen, and again, not really messed around with. I've seen they're one of those that has a ton of those different wine finishes. I know they got like a sherry and a port finish and a bunch of those. They have a ton of.
Don't mess with any of that.
I haven't really screwed around with it.
Yeah.
Well, you got some good recommendations. I appreciate it, man. I'm gonna definitely take note of those. And this has been a lot of fun, man. It's been good chatting, and thanks for coming back on the channel.
Oh yeah, no problem. It's been great. We'll do it again.
We'll do it again sometime for sure. And for folks who are still here, if you've yet to take a sec, go sub to Bourbon Bounty, doing great whiskey reviews on YouTube. He's got a cool 180 VR thing that he does. You'll definitely notice it. I don't think there's anybody else doing that on YouTube, so you'll definitely enjoy it when you check out his videos, especially now that you got the new setup in the background. I recall that that's just a couple months old, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I did the corner shot over here because it is VR 180.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, but it does look like, if you have the visors, it looks literally like I'm sitting right in front of you. But if you don't, you can scroll with your mouse or tilt your phone and look around and see the different things. And I have a couple little Easter eggs, off center,
Yeah, I'll definitely stay tuned and definitely encourage everybody else to. So cool. Yeah, with that, we'll sign off for the night. You guys all stay safe, be well, enjoy the rest of your Sunday evenings. And I will catch everybody Tuesday for happy hour. Bounty, take good care, man. Cheers.
All right, you too.
Have a good night.